Hey, this is Vu, and today I'm going to be talking about improving your aim by improving 3 of the most core fundamental concepts in the entire game. That's going to be your peeking, movement, and crosshair placement. This is something that I think is a huge hole in a lot of newer and lower level players' gameplay, where they just have poor movement across the map. And I think that if you're going to be able to fix your movement and make it a little bit more fluid, you're going to be able to see drastic improvements in your ability to get frags. And actually, I consistently see people complain that they're good on CT side and not T side. And that's because on CT side, a lot of what you're doing is timing and positioning, whereas on T side, most of what you're doing is crosshair placement, peeking, and movement. So going right into it, movement is mostly your fluidity throughout the map. How fluid you can move around the map, peeking while you're peeking angles, peeking as little as possible to clear angles, also having good movement in terms of not getting caught out in the open, and crosshair placement in terms of always having it at head level, but not only that, knowing when to peek narrow angles to clear out angles like this, and when to strafe out, hugging the corner with your crosshair to clear out angles. Now, going straight into this, peeking out, shoulder peeking is good for when there's only one angle that you need to clear. So I'm using cat as an example here. If you get up to cat on this corner, you know that from this wall all the way over to here is going to be clear. You can clear that on your own. You don't have to worry about this. Nobody's going to hug this wall anyways. This is just weird. This doesn't happen very often because it can be easily cleared from middle. So when you come up on cat, you initially shoulder peek stairs to clear this out. Now, importantly, look what you do. You shoulder peek with your crosshair at the exact corner. And that means that if anybody is holding this angle that you're peeking towards, your crosshair is going to be directly on their head, and all you have to do is tap. If you can get through an entire game where you do not have to land any flick shots whatsoever, you just peek corners and one-tap people, you have played what I would consider the perfect game of Counter-Strike. That would be, in my books, the absolute best game ever played if all you do is peek a corner, tap. Peek a corner, tap. That would be amazing. So first, you shoulder peek this corner because there is only one angle they can be. Okay, you are only exposing yourself by shoulder peeking this angle to the corner. Now, importantly, you need to make sure that you are narrow shoulder peeking. That's what shoulder peeking is. You narrowly peek a corner like this, where you're only vulnerable to that corner. A wide peek like this is making you vulnerable to many more areas, but it does have its uses, and I'll go over that later. For narrow peeking, you narrow peek this corner, then you have to clear out the rest of cat. Well, how do you do that? There are multiple angles that a player could be playing along the same plane here. They could be playing anywhere along this entire wall. So this is where you hug the corner with your crosshair while strafing out like this. Now, of course, you're going to find that you might graze over someone, but you should hopefully have the reaction times to only graze over them slightly, turn, easy one tap, and find that frag easily. So you hold the corner there, then you come up here, you can come up here and strafe peek again to clear this. Now, this is a dangerous corner. There are 2 ways you can clear it. First, you can strafe peek and clear it if you expect them to have a rifle. Now, if they don't have a rifle, you have to be very worried, and I'd almost suggest to actually wide peek, simply because this is such a dangerous angle. You either need to have a teammate flash it, or you're basically taking a huge risk peeking out, because if an opper is there, you're basically guaranteed to be dead. Anyways, you peek that angle however you want to do so. You can come over, and again, you're hugging the wall with your crosshair as you peek out around here, because someone could be anywhere from this corner here over to the middle, and all the way from up here, all the way down against that wall. So you peek across with your crosshair so that you're clearing and you're not going to have to flick to someone. For example, if you peek out like this and someone's over there, then you have to hit an insane flick shot, which is going to be very tough for you to do. You do that, then you can jump up, and again, you head all the way up cat, clearing all of the common angles. This is one of the reasons that playing a new map can be so tough, even if you've watched countless hours of perhaps cobble or overpass. Going into the map is always going to be hard because your crosshair placement is poor. If you want to learn a new map, first, watch the game, watch some matches on that map, then go into a server. This is how you practice your movement. You go into a server and find the optimal peeking, crosshair placement, and movement for every area of the map so you can easily move around fluidly without even thinking about it. So now I'm going to head up cat, peek the barrels, peek goose, peek headshot, peek the ramp, and then strafe right on over, and again, you can see I'm holding the corner with my crosshair as I run up. Then I'm going to head over here, peek goose, and there I've cleared out all of sight fluidly with what you could call good movement. Now that I've shown you good movement, obviously you're going to know what bad movement is. Bad movement's here. I peek wide on this corner, which is bad. Then I strafe out without holding the corner there. That's also bad. Perhaps here I peek out wide again, and then I don't have good crosshair placement yet again. Then I peek out multiple angles at the same time. Look what I'm doing here. I'm open to headshot, barrels, these barrels, goose, elevator, and ramp. I'm open to more than 4 angles with that one peek. You want to be at most open to 1 angle at a time, and if you have to peek multiple angles, that's what smokes and flashes are for. You flash so that you can clear out 1 angle and then push up. So again, you're open to as few angles as possible at any given time. Now for peeking, this is where I'm going to get back into wide peeking. There are 3 ways you can peek. There is the shoulder peek that I already stated, where you peek as narrow angle as possible, crosshair on the head, and if you see them, you simply tap. This is what you use when you're clearing an angle and you don't know where someone is. The other 2 styles of peeking are the crouch peek and the wide peek. Now, crouch peeking is something else you can use for clearing narrow angles, but you have to be aware because when you crouch, actually part of your body's showing and you're a little bit more open to a wider angle than if you strafe peek. So crouch peeking is mostly used, again, for angles that you're very aware that they're fairly likely to be playing, but specifically, they're not likely to be playing an angle slightly a couple of degrees off. And you have to also recognize that when you crouch peek out, you commit yourself. One thing about peeking is when you shoulder peek and you peek out like this, if you miss your shot, you just strafe back. That's something that everybody needs to recognize. Too many people commit themselves. They peek out, spot someone, miss their first few shots, and then don't recognize that they can easily strafe back. So shoulder peeking is the least committed of all of the peeks. Crouch peeking is the second least committed, and wide peeking is absolutely entirely committed. So you crouch peek very common angles when you're confident you can land your shot. Crouch peeking is a lot more common with the op because, again, you need to land that shot, and you're basically, by crouch peeking, you're sacrificing your ability to fall back because you can't shoot, and then if you're crouched, it's really hard. It takes much longer to get away. You're sacrificing that ability for the fact that you're going to have better peeker's advantage, and that is a mechanic in CSGO. You can look up videos on this. When you peek out on someone, you actually see them before they see you. And by crouching out, you stop your movement so quickly. On their screen, you're going to look like you teleport out, and you see them so long before they see you. So by crouch peeking, you're sacrificing your ability to move back by having better reaction times. Now, wide peeking is much more situational. The only time I really like to wide peek, there are 2 situations. First, if I know someone's holding an angle and I think that they're going to be able to outshoot me or they're expecting me to crouch out. In this scenario, wide peeking means that they have to adjust their aim, which it makes it very hard for them. What's going to happen is you can imagine someone holding this corner with his crosshair at head level. Now, if you strafe peek out, if you simply shoulder peek him, he's going to tap and shoot your head off. If you crouch peek out, it's a small adjustment. It makes it a little bit harder, but again, he can still take your head off. If you wide peek, what's going to happen is he's going to see you, expect to be able to take your head off, but then your head is over to the right. So he has to readjust his aim. So not only does that mean that he has slower reactions in readjusting his aim, but he also has the possibility to miss his shot, where he's really never going to miss if you simply strafe into his crosshair. That's what I'm saying about peeking being so important, because if you strafe peek out right on someone, you make it not only easier for yourself to land a shot, but with good peeking, you make it harder for their player to land a shot. If you've ever played against a player that you go, wow, I can't hit this guy, it's probably because he has amazing movement, not just because you're landing poor shots or you're getting unlucky. He likely has very good movement, and you've probably noticed this if you've ever played an aim map 1v1 server where there are certain players that you just cannot hit, and that's because their movement is so good. Now, so wide peeking is for if you think you want to throw off their aim, and you can actually wide peek, crouch peek as well, and it doesn't really make much of a difference other than throwing off your hitboxes. Now, the other thing you might want to wide peek for is, the reason I suggested it here is if an opper or a rifler is holding a very narrow angle, what you can do is you strafe out across their angle so they actually can't see you anymore, and you can either see portions of them if they're crouched, or they have to decide either to fall back or to strafe peek out on you. And what you do is you strafe across their angle, and then you're ready for them to re-peek out, and you find that simple one tap as soon as they come out, and that's a free kill. Now, in terms of practicing, again, I very, very much recommend you come into a server and get comfortable with peeking every angle on any map you want to play. Actually, there is an entry fragger config that I've taken from someone else. However, I've modified it to be my own entirely. So you could say not really taken from someone else. And what I've done is placed bots around short in the standard spots that people will be. Now, you have to be aware that what you don't want to do is get used to the bot positioning and start to only peek towards the bots. You want to get good crosshair movement, placement, and peeking while still clearing out the bots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to peek out here, strafe around, and easy kills. And this is going to be easy kills around the map because I'm going to be peeking out all of these spots just like I would in a normal game, and simply clearing out spots where my crosshair is immediately on their head as soon as I peek around. So this is very simple, and you can see I'm one-tapping all of these bots. Of course, they are bots, but this is not very much different than you would find in a game if someone is simply holding an angle. It is so simple for me to come around the corner and one-tap them. That's why I'm saying peeking and movement are more than 70% of your aim. Point-click aim is only really necessary if you have bad movement. Of course, it's always going to happen where you need to have great point-click aim, but you want to minimize your need to have point-click aim, because I can tell you, when I was playing in this game originally, and when I played in Source, I had terrible point-click aim. It's improved over the years, but it used to be horrendous. And I used to mitigate that by the fact that my peeking and movement was flawless. Now, the other ways you might want to practice this, you can actually go into aim map 1v1 servers. You search AM_ in your server browser, and you'll find those. And a lot of people seem to think that those are not useful at all. However, I think they're useful for one thing, and that is peeking. Okay, you can get used to shoulder peeking, crouch peeking, and wide peeking all by playing on those servers. The final way that you can practice your ability to actually find frags and work on your peeking, movement, and crosshair placement is, again, you can just head into a deathmatch, and you can head around the deathmatch as if you were clearing out in a normal server. Of course, this is going to happen a lot differently, but whenever you're deathmatching, this is just a habit you need to get into. If you're deathmatching, don't run around the map like a chicken with your head cut off. You want to be still peeking every angle as if you were playing in a game. That way, when you get into a game, Everything is second nature. You head into the server and it's like you don't even have to think about your peeking and your movement and your crosshair placement. It just happens. Once you get to that point, your aim is going to be incredible. Thanks for watching, and I hope this helped. To end this video, I'm going to give you an example of me running around at long A on Dust 2 with good crosshair placement. It's important to remember that even when idly running, you need to be aiming at the most likely position that someone could peek and at the head level.
Smoke! Grenade! I am planting the bomb.